Good morning. Welcome to the Weather Desk. Here we are into early December, and we've got some weather to track for you across the country. A big winter storm producing a lot of snow across parts of the country. No doubt about that. We're going to have more on that. Who's being impacted in what ways, what it means for Hampton Roads. We have a weather impact alert right here, and we've got a lot to talk about over the coming half hour. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. It is my pleasure to be with you over the next half hour here from the Weather Desk. And, you know, we cover today's top weather headlines, the stories that we're tackling today, this winter storm impacting the Eastern U.S. This system expected to bomb out. I'll explain more about that and what that really means. If you've heard that expression, you might be going, what exactly does it mean for this thing to bomb out? You know, how bad is it going to get? We'll talk about all of that. Also, coming up a little later in the show, we're going to have some really tough news out of Indonesia and Southeast Asia, where nicer weather is now revealing the extent of disaster associated with the cyclone that came through and the extensive flooding. There are hundreds and hundreds of people that have lost their lives due to the flooding and some mudslides and landslides in that part of the world, specifically Indonesia and parts of Southeast Asia. So we'll have more on that story. Also, a boulder comes crashing down on a car in Washington. We'll hear from person inside that car, what it happened and how that person reacted. An interesting story coming up there. Then we're going to look ahead to meteorological winter. I mentioned we're into December, so December, January, February, those 3 months make up meteorological winter. Of course, we have winter starting with the winter solstice, if you look at it from an astrological standpoint, or astronomical standpoint. I just said, yeah, astronomy, astrology. All right. Anyway, with the winter solstice. And then we have a late week system that we will break down. Coming up, we do have another chance for maybe some snow. We'll talk about that and how all of this could play out for parts of the mid-Atlantic with this next system. So plenty to break down. All right, let's start off, though, with this winter storm and the impacts here. Not snow, but heavy rainfall. That's why we've declared this weather impact alert for the heavy rainfall. We've already seen it this morning through the morning commute. Started off fairly light around 5 o'clock or so this morning, and then it was kind of light to moderate through about 6 to 6:30. Then it became heavy, and it has been heavy rain across the region since that time, and it will continue over the next few hours, and then things improve after noon. Now, there is the possibility we could deal with some standing water on some of the roadways or ponding. So really, you know, encouraging motorists here in the mid-Atlantic to allow a little extra travel time this morning, and please use extra caution while on the roads. Let's take a look at the big picture here. And again, this storm system moving along. It's an area of low pressure that's kind of developing along a frontal boundary, and it is likely to strengthen a bit as it moves off to the northeast and clears the coast. This thing has been a big weather maker. Snow across the central U.S. through the Ohio River Valley, and now that snow, that heavier snow, heading into New England. We've got the rain here. There's been some mixing over the mountains just out to the west, but it's largely been rain across our area. We're going to focus on that in just a moment, but right now we want to get kind of the big picture with this system kind of expected to bomb out. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a report from Amy Kiley on how the weather has been impacting people across the country.
Tuesday is the day that the Northeast is going to see the majority of the snow from this winter storm.
The third winter storm of this week is sweeping across the country. The record-setting doozy is hitting the eastern U.S. today. It's bringing northern snow, southern rain, and a chance for Gulf Coast tornadoes.
It is going to be a wet, sloppy mess with rain heavy at times throughout parts of the southeast.
Farther west, people are digging out after previous rounds of snow and ice. The FAA says some airports could see ground stops today after one at Chicago O'Hare last night.
You know, you are in Chicago, you got to be ready for any storm.
Officials say a child was taken to the hospital with minor injuries after this school bus crash in northern Illinois yesterday. This video from Topeka, Kansas shows school bus drivers stopping on the side of a slippery highway. Nearby Kansas City has a new daily snowfall record from yesterday. And in Minneapolis, a man is using the recent weather to build an ice castle.
There's lights in the castle, there's all sorts of caverns, there's ice slides, there's going to be a little bar.
In addition to the snow and rain, forecasters predict new low temperature records in some parts of the country today.
The weather pattern that we're in keeps it cold for most of the week for most of the country.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.
All right, this system has been, as she put it, a doozy working across the country. Down in Alabama at Mobile, yesterday they set a new daily rainfall record. And in Missouri, we were talking about the snow. I've got family back in St. Louis. I used to work at KSDK in St. Louis and covered a lot of winter storms. This was another one, producing several inches of snow and a lot of crashes around the St. Louis metro. First responders had their hands full after multiple vehicles ended up on the sides of the road. You can see that. Some of the incidents included that pickup truck crashing into a guardrail, a school bus that slid off one of the highways into a ditch. And fortunately, there have been no reports of serious injury. But I can tell you in St. Louis, talking to family members and some friends back there, the roads were so bad at times, it took like 20-minute commutes and turned them into hours-long commutes. And there was one case where one of my son's good friends had to travel about 25 minutes or so normally, and it took them about 3.5, 4 hours to get to where they needed. So all kinds of trouble there. We were looking at 40 through St. Louis. That's 64 becomes 40 right there in St. Louis, west of St. Louis County, and along I-70, 270, some of the areas snow covered, and they really had a tough go. All right, back here, though, it has been rain, and we do want to focus on this. We're going to swing live, and I can see there is a new advisory down to the south. Let's take this full. I want to manipulate the maps here, and we'll take a look at some of the more intense rainfall. For Norfolk right now, rainfall rates, they've been coming down. Let's take a quick look here at some of the rainfall rates. Basically, we've seen at times the rain coming down at maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch an hour. So we have had some kind of, what I would call fairly significant rain, heavy at times. When you look down to the south, it's been very heavy down around the Outer Banks, and we do have this advisory, and we can take a quick look at this advisory again that is out there around the southern parts of North Carolina, around Emerald Isle. You can see Carteret, Craven, Jones, and Onslow counties down there. That flood advisory until 9:30. More heavy rain as we look a little farther to the northeast of that across Ocracoke Island, back over towards Buxton, southern part of the Outer Banks. The rain coming down and very, very heavy right now, back over both the Albemarle, closer to the Outer Banks, and then farther south in the Pamlico, some very heavy rain there. Right now, we have out in our weather impact interceptor, one of our colleagues. We have photojournalist Jaron Partman out there. And Jaron, I see you're stopped right now. Again, you've got cameras all around that vehicle. Talk to us for a second, Jaron, about what you've been seeing. You got out there around 4:30. How have conditions changed?
Yes, sir. Been out here about 4:30 this morning, and we've been on 264 and 64, and now I'm heading through Norfolk, passing Old Dominion University, and it's just wet and nasty, Craig. Just to put it plainly, just wet and nasty. It doesn't seem like it's letting up any soon, but the funny thing is that it was heavier at one point, if you could believe it. It was heavier than this, but it's kind of let up a little bit, but there's definitely no signs of stopping. And you mentioned the ponding, lots of ponding throughout the Norfolk area, right where I'm at currently. Unfortunately, having technical difficulties, but I want to point to the right-hand side of your screen. There is ponding right where that white Volkswagen is. I don't know if you can tell, but it's serious ponding, so just want to have drivers be careful out there.
Now, the Weather Impact Interceptor is outfitted. It's got what we call aggressive tires, great tires for getting around in all kinds of weather conditions. Were you at any point, did you ever experience any winds? They haven't been reported as real strong. So have you had any problems with that anywhere driving, or has it just been basically navigating wet conditions?
A little earlier, there was a couple wind gusts. You might see leaves flying everywhere, but nothing too crazy. It's mainly just been the rain.
All right, well, I appreciate that. And as you've been driving around, one more question for you, Jaron. Have you guys witnessed any traffic issues or accidents? Anybody having any problems, or have folks been doing a pretty good job with it?
People have been doing pretty good. Unfortunately, earlier when we were on 264, we did see a couple cars pulled over, seeking some attention, but nothing too serious. Everything seemed to be okay, and everybody just seemed to be intact.
All right, Jaron, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and again, having the vehicle out all morning with Jeremiah Beatty earlier, bringing us some more updates. Be safe out there, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here at the station. I do want to get into the radar now and take a little closer look at some of the areas where you may be encountering some of that heavier activity. Just to give you a reference, here's where Jaron was. He was located up towards Old Dominion, and the rain is much lighter in this part of Norfolk. So as we come south, there are still some areas around the 264 interchange where the rain is more intense. We also have some heavier rain down to the south, extending out towards the ocean front, down around Dam Neck and the Virginia Beach resort area there at the ocean front. More rain back across portions of Portsmouth. It's more intense there around Ahoy Acres and Academy Park. As we take a look out towards Jolliffe, we also have some moderate to heavier rain. You get out into Suffolk, the rain's been coming down there. And again, the rain has been falling at a pretty good clip. At times, we've had those rainfall rates coming down over a half an inch to an inch per hour. So there have been some heavier amounts. Now, as we take a look again, we don't have any advisories across the immediate area. But as we go along, we need folks to know that you could still have issues with the rain just kind of pooling up in some low areas or some poor drainage areas. Again, more intense rainfall just south of Knott's Island down through Currituck, Water Lily. I think about areas down towards Southern Shores, Kitty Hawk, intense rainfall right there. Of course, so much of Hampton Roads, the water is so widespread around us with the inlets, the bays, the rivers, the ocean, obviously, and all the sounds. So a lot of this stuff runs off into the water pretty easily, and we haven't really had any reports of super significant winds, so that is a blessing to us, because where we really get into trouble is when the winds are driving the water levels up. Then we get the heavy rain on top of it. The rain has nowhere to go. When the tides are up, it can't run into the ocean or the bay because the water's already backed up. So that's where our region really gets hit, and fortunately the winds have been a little lighter. As I mentioned, down around the Pamlico Sound, intense rainfall down there approaching Rodanthe and Avon. This next area is going to work up along Ocracoke and slam into the southern part of the Outer Banks. Nothing severe, but again, we could see some more flood advisories down south. The rain is a bit lighter off to the north. Then once we get up towards the I-81 area and we take a look at this, this is from around Stanton on down towards Lexington. We've got some mixed precipitation. There is snow back out in the higher elevations of West Virginia. So travel along 64 there. Once you get out past Lexington, you start to find that snow in the higher elevations. And we've seen snow at times across northern portions of the Commonwealth as well. Right now, there's more of a transition around Woodstock up to Winchester, Hagerstown. You've got a little bit of mix with maybe some snow just north of Hagerstown up into Maryland there. And then obviously points to the north of that up into Pennsylvania. You get into more snow, and the snow is widespread for the Northeast. So a lot going on with this system right now. Again, for Hampton Roads, it's mainly rain. Well, it's all rain for our area, but I mean, that's the big concern. I'm not too concerned with wind at this point. Things could change up, though, because, as I mentioned, while we're dealing with the rain here and conditions that are okay, we'll continue to monitor all of this for you. this system may well bomb out as we go along. So let me show you where the low is just now forming along a frontal boundary. This thing barely forming, and as it moves along and comes offshore later today and then through the afternoon, gets up into this area, this is where it's more likely to actually bomb out. You hear us talking about this phrase bomb out or bomb cyclone. You might hear it popping up, on several different reports, whether it's from us here at 13 News Now or one of the national outlets. So when you hear it, you might wonder, what exactly does this mean? Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandagis explains.
Bombogenesis, one of the more fun meteorological terms that we get to throw around as scientists talking about storms. But when you hear that word, what exactly does it mean? We see this term looped in a lot of the time with developing nor'easters that lead to New England blizzards in the wintertime. A large temperature gradient leads the storm to undergo rapid intensification. The storm is pulling in cold air from the north, which is interacting with still warm ocean temperatures. This gradient drives the storm to deepen and intensify. The buzzword that you've probably heard is bomb cyclone. This is a storm that has or is currently undergone bombogenesis or rapid intensification. Now, not just any storm can garner the title bomb cyclone. There are criteria that must be satisfied first. The storm's central pressure must deepen or drop 24 millibars or more in 24 hours' time. When this occurs, you can bet the storm will be impactful. These storms are capable of very heavy rain or snow and can be accompanied by nearly hurricane-force wind gusts. Bomb cyclones are not unique to any one time of the year. However, they seem to be most common from October through March, the winter months. These storms are also becoming a bit more frequent thanks to warmer ocean temperatures lingering later into the winter, clashing with intense Arctic cold outbreaks. Bomb cyclones can be quite fascinating to watch evolve just off our coasts and Hampton Roads, and have been responsible for some of the more impactful winter storms locally. For 13 News Now, I'm Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandagis.
So again, we're looking for potential rapid development over the 24-hour period. Let's take a look at what the models suggest this could do. Again, this is the Euro and the American models. They're both going to pop up on this map here. And right now, that low is just starting to form along that frontal boundary. I showed you the low, still weak. Just a wave developing along this frontal boundary, but watch how the models handle it. And again, these models that I show you, this comparison, this is something that we do a lot when tracking hurricanes and big, developing monster storms out there. So we can show you how the Euro and the GFS, sometimes they differ, sometimes they're very close. Well, taking a look at these two, in this case, I'm showing you how the models both develop this thing into a very strong area of low pressure, and they do this very quickly later this afternoon and tonight, and then they pull it off to the northeast. So this thing is likely to become a much, much stronger system. Fortunately, the worst of it will be offshore, but I do expect winds to pick up across the northeast, and I also anticipate some very rough seas out there, so those will be a couple of the issues. Now, you might be wondering, okay, you just showed us the lines, okay, what we call isobars, or different lines of equal pressure, showing kind of the deepening of those areas of low pressure. What's it really mean in terms of weather? Well, you can see how our futurecast here brings that snow up across New England through the middle part of the day. Still rain here in Hampton Roads. We're going to be drying out later on, but it does intensify that low pressure here. Still a lot of snow through the afternoon. It really ramps this up as it continues to move along. This is a tightening low, still throwing some snow back to parts of Maine and New England, back down towards Boston, maybe a little bit of rain back in the mix here, and some rough wind and some heavy surf there before it pulls away. So that's kind of a different model view of what this thing is expected to do. We will, of course, keep a close eye to it. I do want to show you some of the travel impacts, and let's take this full one more time so we can show you some of the different delays and issues that we've been seeing. This was through early this morning, and I can select different things from rain, which you see the moderate delays for our region on down to the south along the Carolinas, down through Georgia and Alabama, out to the west, Kentucky and West Virginia. When you factor in the snow being the cause for travel delays early this morning, you saw that snow was a bigger issue back across Ohio and into western parts of Pennsylvania. As we go forward into the middle part of the day, you'll notice those moderate impacts sliding over to the east to the coast. That's our area. And again, it is rain that is going to trigger those travel issues. So we really are encouraging folks, allow a little extra travel time with the rain widespread from all the way up into New England, through New York City, New Jersey, down through Philly, obviously Delaware, Maryland, and Eastern Virginia, coastal sections of North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Now, the snow, that's the bigger issue still for parts of the Northeast U.S. So this is going to be an issue through midday from eastern Pennsylvania through New York State and up into New England. As we go forward into the late day, still some snow along the coast in the Northeast. We really have big improvements coming up here. We will see much nicer conditions, and that's some good news for us here in Hampton Roads. All right, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, I'm going to have an update on the aftermath from a powerful cyclone that ripped through Indonesia, really impacting Southeast Asia. They've been dealing with landslides and mudslides and a lot of flooding in that part of the world. So we've got some really rough news to pass along, but they're starting to get a clear assessment of just how bad it's been. So we'll show you that and a look ahead to meteorological winter. We're into it now with the start of December. More on that after the break. Welcome back to the Weather Desk. We're going to turn our attention to Southeast Asia, specifically Indonesia. Rescue teams are struggling to reach the hardest hit areas of the country after Cyclone Senyar caused catastrophic landslides and flooding. At least 604 people have died and more than 460 are still missing, according to government data just released on Monday. Rescuers have been struggling to reach residents stranded by the floodwaters where monsoon rains have caused rivers to overflow, according to CNN affiliate CNN Indonesia. As some of the flooding has begun to recede, residents have begun to confront the loss of thousands of homes, businesses, and places of worship, which were buried under several feet of mud and debris. All right, we're going to turn our attention back to the United States and Washington State and an area to the east of Seattle and north of Yakima, specifically Leavenworth, Washington. And this morning, a driver recounts the moment a boulder broke loose outside, came crashing down onto the passenger side of the car he was in. The Singe family was just 3 miles outside Leavenworth when the road that they were driving countless times turned dangerous in an instant.
The Singh family was just 3 miles outside Leavenworth when the road they've driven countless times turned dangerous in an instant.
It was quick. It was less than 2 seconds. My truck was going from this lane to this lane.
A father, his wife, their 3 kids, and the children's grandmother had just started their journey home when a boulder the size of a small car broke loose from the hillside and slammed into their passenger side.
I felt it when something hit it like hard. It happened so quick that my truck started sliding to oncoming traffic.
He turned the wheel and hit the shoulder to avoid a head-on crash. The impact jammed the doors and smoke started coming from under the hood.
The door was not opening anymore, and so she was able to break her side of the window and got out and opened the door and got the kids out.
The whole family was taken to the hospital. His middle child was hurt worst, suffering a bruised liver.
She was transported from the hospital to Harborview. They kept her for a couple of days.
Strangers stopped to help, including a woman who put the children in her car to keep them warm until troopers arrived.
She called 911 and everybody was, luckily the ambulance and state troopers, they came fast.
Troopers say the rockfall was unavoidable, a narrow stretch mixed with rain and snow and no warning.
Yeah, it's still shocking. I mean, when you go to bed and sleep, I can still have like nightmares, like, oh my gosh, what could happen, We could end up in rivers, we could have happened, head-on collisions, straight cars. So yeah, definitely, it's going to take some time.
Wow. Incredible story there. It's always hard to imagine those rock slides and then boulders. It is pretty wild. And again, I'm glad that the driver was able to recount what was going on and that he was okay. As we take a look at what's happening here across the eastern part of the country, you're thinking, okay, winter is here for parts of the country. May not really feel like winter just yet in Hampton Roads, but we classify this time of year as meteorological winter. Again, December, January, and February. Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandagis explains what this means and why it's so important to collecting data.
December 1st marked the official start of meteorological winter. And while the calendar won't flip to astronomical winter until the solstice on December 21st, we in the weather world break down the seasons a little differently. Meteorological seasons are based on the annual temperature cycle, not the tilt of the Earth. They divide the year into 4 clean 3-month blocks. Winter runs December through February, spring's March through May, summer is June through August, and fall September through November. It gives us consistent, accurate climate data to compare year after year. So what does an average meteorological winter look like here in Hampton Roads? Well, we typically start December with highs in the upper 50s and lows in the low 40s. By mid-January, the coldest point of the winter, average highs drop to around 50 degrees with lows near freezing. And by the end of February, we're already beginning to warm back up into the mid-50s. Our extremes can be pretty impressive, too. The warmest winter temperature on record is a balmy 82 degrees, while the coldest dropped all the way to 3 below. Rainfall and snow, well, a typical winter brings just under 10 inches of rain and about 5 to 6 inches of snow. Though, as we all know, that snow doesn't always fall evenly, and some winters deliver much more, while others deliver almost nothing at all. And one more thing we're noticing right now. We're at the time of the year with the earliest sunsets. Sunset is at 4:48, and it will stay that way for the next week or so before slowly ticking later again. Even though the solstice is still a few weeks away, our earliest sunset's actually happening right now in early December. So as we turn the page into meteorological winter, the colder months officially begin, and we'll be keeping a close eye on how this year compares to our winter normals.
All right, our transmission jammed up there for a second, but thank you, Tim, for that update. Right now, we're taking a look at the rain that's falling, and let's focus on that for Hampton Roads. Chances for rain remain high as we go through the noon hour. Shortly thereafter, it's going to fall and drop off significantly. You can see through the late afternoon and into the early evening, the chances will be much, much lower. Now, as we take a look at the rain, once that moves out, we're good tonight and tomorrow. The one thing I'll say about tomorrow's weather, there might be a bay effect snow flurry. Not a big deal, but don't be surprised if you see a little flurry streaming in off the bay. We'll see. All right, here are the rainfall projections with a few of the models. We picked 5 of them. The NAM and the graph are higher resolution models, and they update a little more frequently. The GFS is a global model along with the European and the Canadian there, and they have been producing 1 to 2 inches of rainfall has been the expectation, and we have had heavy rain. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. You see that rain falling with the Thompson Creek Window Company Skyview. This is from Nauticus looking across the Elizabeth River. You can't even make out the marine terminals over at Portsmouth there. So again, it is one of those days with the rain heavy at times. We're dealing with it, as I've been mentioning through the show. The winds are lighter. We do have small craft advisories up for the bay and for the ocean, so obviously not a good time to be out on the water. You want to stay in port. Rain is going to fall through noon. As we get into the early afternoon, the chances drop off significantly, and I think we'll see a little bit of sunshine later this afternoon breaking through the clouds. Eventually, overnight, skies are going to become mainly clear. As we zoom in, that heaviest rain along the Carolina coast, we've got some pockets of heavier rain here in southeast Virginia as well, but things are improving as we look ahead to the afternoon. So while the rain is out there right now, we'll pick up our future cast. You'll see how the heavy rain continues through 11 o'clock. By noon, a lot of it is pulling away, and then into the afternoon, we dry out, and eventually we should see some breaks in the clouds as well late afternoon and into the evening. What about tomorrow? Well, tomorrow we're going to start off mainly clear, but with the winds coming down from the north, that's cooler air blowing across the warm waters of the Chesapeake Bay and our warm coastal waters. We could see a few plumes or streaks, what we call streamers, coming in off the bay, and this could produce a few flurries. So don't be surprised if you live around the Lesnar, or maybe you're at the, somewhere around Fort Story or anywhere, even a little farther south in Virginia Beach, if you get a few bay effect snow flurries out your way early tomorrow. Temperatures are going to warm into the mid-40s. We're not worried about this accumulating or creating a whole lot of trouble, anything like that, but a few flurries possible early tomorrow morning. Afternoon temperatures chilly in the mid-40s. We will see a lot of sunshine. Should be a sunny afternoon, and looking ahead to Thursday, mostly sunny, maybe a few fair weather clouds from time to time. Should be a little bit warmer there on Thursday. We'll take that. Looking ahead to Friday, our next storm system. So we'll talk about that. Additional rainfall from the graph model here suggesting a ½ inch to an inch. So we are not done with the heavy rain. Maybe a few heavier pockets down over eastern North Carolina. All right, I do want to talk to you about the outlook with this next potential storm system. You can see how the GFS here, this is the American Global Model. The global forecast system carries that wet weather away. And then for Friday, it brings in some more rain. Now, this brings it in Friday afternoon and into early Saturday. That's the GFS model. You'll notice no big deal. Doesn't worry too much about snow. It keeps the snow farther to the north and away from the area. Let's look at the European model. Different solution. Again, bringing the rain out. That's today's storm. So that's very much in step with the GFS. But when we look ahead to Friday, this is what I wanted to show you. Coming up into early Friday, this one does produce a little bit of snow out to the west early Friday morning, and then maybe some mixed precipitation Friday mid-morning with maybe a few areas with some light snow out to the west. Again, two models, two different solutions. We're going to say there's a possibility of some mixing on the northern edge or the northwest parts of the viewing area. So we're going to be watching for that, a transition to rain, and then that too shows the improvements into early parts of the weekend, specifically Saturday morning. Things should get better if the Euro is correct. But that's our next system, and it is something we're going to be watching as this active pattern continues. Temperatures today, mid-50s, a few spots a little bit warmer, but temps falling off late afternoon. We have 40s to the north. Rain pretty widespread across the area and down to the south as well. As we go along tonight, the low near 34, but the skies clearing out tomorrow. Mostly sunny, a Bay Effect flurry a possibility, and then more sunshine later in the day, Wednesday and Thursday. We'll see that next chance for wet weather late Friday into Saturday, and maybe a little inland wintry mix. We'll see. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Weather Desk. Again, you can download our app, take our forecast with you on the go. I'm meteorologist Craig Moeller. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.